Hello, this is Goku4071 here with a video about my thoughts on the video game generations and how it's come along. And this is also going to be a video response to Blows Himself Up Dude's video on how he believes that this generation is worse than generations past and it's getting worse and worse. And I'm going to try to mainly leave facts in here. There will be some opinion because this is somewhat of an opinionated type video. I will also King191912 did a video, and if you want to watch his, definitely watch Blows Himself Up Dude's video first. I will do my best to put a link, and watch King's, and I will put a link if I can on his video too. So, Blows Himself Up Dude talked about a lot of things, but he got some stuff wrong. So let's just talk about the facts that he got wrong first. Okay, first of all is, I can give him the benefit of the doubt. The Nintendo generation was my first, was when I got first into video games, and I know a lot of people who consider that the first. So even though on Wikipedia they consider it the third generation, we can call it the first. But he said Nintendo was first generation. Well, there was also the Master System. It might not have been widely known because at the time Nintendo had 80 to 90% of the gaming market. I think they had like 87. I'm not exactly sure on the number, but I know it was a large number, and basically everybody owned a Nintendo. Very few people owned the Sega Master System, but it existed and it had some good games. And it was Sega's very first video game system. Okay, then came Super Nintendo, or then came Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. And he is correct. They did enhance things. They gave you a lot more. They did more than just graphics. Graphics were a huge thing because back then graphics mattered, because graphics matter today, but they mattered a lot more back then because there was a bigger leap. And you had the first sign of 3D games. Now they weren't full 3D like Star Fox. There were a couple other ones that had like 3D emulated effects. Then you get into the next generation where he completely messed up on this one because he named 2 of the 4 that I consider, and the Atari Jaguar is an opinion. If you want to include it, you can. I do, because I actually owned one and I enjoyed it a little bit. Not really. Had very few good games. But this is where Sega Saturn falls in. It was this generation. It failed. It was still a very notable system, and there were reasons why these systems failed. One reason this system failed is because you could bootleg the games. That always hurts when you can do that. Okay, then Sony got into the arena. The reason Sony got into the arena, if nobody knows, and yes, this will have some gaming history in here, is because they were partnering with Nintendo. It was originally Philips to build a CD system. Nintendo got out with Philips. Philips came with the CDI. The same thing happened with Sony, and they created the Sony PlayStation. So Nintendo basically stabbed themselves in the back, but they also knew that CD technology was not ready to be used, and to the most part they were, because it was very easy to emulate a lot of the stuff. Then we have N64. Okay, and that was basically third generation. And it had huge leaps because it started to have some voice acting. It did have full cutscenes. It definitely had 3D, and this was a huge leap forward in gaming, and it was a gigantic leap forward. And he's right so far on that. Now comes fourth generation, the generation that was right before the generation we're at. Okay, and started with the Sega Dreamcast. The Sega Dreamcast is fourth generation. It's not bunched up with N64 or PlayStation. He was completely wrong on this. It came out a year before Sony PlayStation 2. So I don't know how he didn't realize this, but I understand he's not a gamer. I'm a gamer. I do know this stuff. Sega Dreamcast was a very good system. It had great games. It had such great games that a lot of them are being ported over today, and a lot of them continued. It was not the game support. It was two very, very big functions. You could easily copy the games and play them. I know a bunch of friends that own the Sega Dreamcast but don't own a single game. They own burned games. That kills systems. That's horrible when you can do that, because then nobody buys games, they just burn them. Second of all was the lack of a DVD player. And it was the first system to actually have online functionality. You could actually get online decently with your Dreamcast. It was dial-up, but it existed, and they probably would have given you something to get broadband or whatever. But yes, it was the very first online system. But yes, no DVD player. Sony came out, and Sony PlayStation 2 was the cheapest DVD player at the time, at I believe $300. And back then, $300 for a DVD player was reasonable. Today, yeah, you can get a Blu-ray player for under that. So yes, that was a leap forward. And then there was the PlayStation. And then obviously there was the GameCube, and then the Xbox. The GameCube and Xbox came out about the same time, so I'm not sure which one was first. And this is where I think the leap forward kind of stopped. This time around you get full soundtracks. Most games had full dialogue. But it was pretty much just a leap forward in graphics. So if you're going to talk about that this generation gaming, this is where I think it all began, because there was no big thing here. The controllers were very similar to the last generation. Sony's was identical. So if you're going to talk about that, the downgrade of, or that these generations are getting worse, I think it starts with I think it definitely starts with 4th generation. And then we have 5th generation. Now, 5th generation is still going on, and it is Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii, in that order. And the Wii is probably the one that actually had the most innovation in gaming. But this is going to be fixed. Both of them are coming out their own motion sensitive, and this is a leap forward. But there are some big leap forwards. There's not just graphics. Enemies on screen was the huge thing they were talking about. Videos are now more massive in games. There are big leap forwards, you just don't notice them. Just because somebody doesn't realize there are changes in games doesn't mean they don't exist. There are graphical overhauls. The ability to have Blu-ray in a system was a huge big thing. Only Sony caught on to this. 3D. Yes, we're at a point where things are starting to change. You're also looking at that this generation is going to last a lot longer. This generation is only in its infancy. It's still got a very long ways to go, and gaming experts are even talking about this. 3D will be a reality very soon, and I think it's going to enhance games, but you do got to look at a lot of different things. A lot of different things are going to come out of this, but there really isn't much to add, and I do think that is a big problem. That we're getting to a point where we've done almost everything, and now we're just adding in bells and whistles. And there are a lot of bells and whistles to add, but there will be some leap forwards. The Nintendo DS, Nintendo 3DS is coming out, and that's going to be the beginning of 6th generation, because handhelds also have 5 generations as of now, and the 6th is going to begin in about 9 months, and this is a leap forward. It's adding newer things, and it's glasses free. So this is one leap forward. So they are catching on. We'll have more internet capability. So if you are a handheld fan, the system's going to be great, and Ocarina of Time's on it. Now, this is Goku Fortison1, and this is part 1 of Video Game Generations. Please leave a comment or a video response if you have any comments about this. Part 2 will be up, hopefully, almost immediately after this part. I have recorded the whole thing, so if you have any thoughts about anything, or if you have any questions, please go ahead. Part 2 will mainly be talking about my opinion on games. It'll be more of an opinionated video. This was less opinionated and more facts. Yeah, see you next time, YouTube.